for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to another video with me here today, in which Spirit wants to add a third component of the topic we've been discussing at this time about our current events, collective, planetary, and how this concerns us personally, of course. So it's interesting how Spirit wanted to speak through me from the highest, most evolutionary perspective of creation cycles, and then viewing a planetary perspective and what is the current energy behind the energy we're feeling as individuals, and how only at the third level, because they told me from the beginning this will be actually a trinity or a trilogy of light video made of 3 videos that all deal around the same thing, except, you know, it's a layering process. So this third one would be the last one, dealing more with how we're involved as humans and our personal perspective and how we're experiencing this new birth. So Spirit wanted me to also add a little more about the more dualistic perspective as well, or what we know, the lesser perspective of the current duality unfolding on our planet that is being pushed through several agendas and operations behind the scenes. But it's almost like I'm feeling Spirit didn't want to address this first. It almost like wanted us to feel the descent of light, how everything has a higher origin, so that we can embrace this lesser perspective of the current events and how we're being pushed and manipulated again and almost like squeezed into a corner. But Spirit wanted us to see that first, and that's why I'm feeling it wanted to address this level last, so that we can already have a higher perspective once we enter a more dualistic framework of our current happenings. Okay, so again, the topic is our current experience of the planetary reset point, the personal shutdown and lockdowns, and the news of this apparent virus, right? And how this is affecting all of our lives. So I want to address first some of the other perspectives of what this can be, like a pushed background agenda by those we call sometimes the Dark Lords, the True Masters, you know, or, you know, the elite, whatever you wish to call them, like the global scheming network. You know, you can name them yourself. You know, it's all out in the open. The issue is that whenever we feed too much into that perspective, we're actually feeding it, and that's kind of like the challenge for most of light beings on this planet, and people who've been pushing another alternative and the change towards a new betterment of the brotherhood and sisterhood of all, and the collective planetary and personal abundance, right, on all levels. It's almost like the challenge was to know this path of the dark, but not to get involved in it. So it was funny enough how just this week I've encountered someone explaining in a reading something about a specific energy, and suddenly they started talking about the reptilian energy, and they were saying something like, you know, reptilian energy is another energy. It's like an alternate energy. And as a human, right, with your human consciousness, because that's a different level of consciousness, you don't face it directly, you know, you don't go confront it in a way that I'm going to battle you, right? And that's what we're actually doing when we're trying to too much understand the workings of the dark and feeling oppressed just by sometimes hearing the words of what's being done, because that's what automatically makes us feel that we're not the ones in control, that they are, right? Because they are so good in scheming in what they do. But that's just the way they experience life. That's all they know is control, right? And this abstraction from the universal life force that sustains all life, and that there is abundance for all, and it always should be. But as you know, it wasn't experienced in this planet for eons of time, like for centuries and centuries, actually, right? Thousands of years. So the thing is, like it was explained in that narrative, it was almost like you don't confront that energy because you always lose. what you do is you just keep on focusing on your direction. You keep on walking your path and doing the things that inspire you as a human, because as humans, we're birthing something on our own. And those consciousnesses that we know, they're not of human origin, and those are actually the consciousnesses behind these bigger legislations and governmental operatives, but that's basically behind the government itself. It's like it goes way back. But the problem is that the moment we as a collective of human light beings that we're facing is when we think of that being the ultimate, like that's the ultimate plan, new world order, one matrix system for all, dominance, right, martial law, all of these things. And the moment we start thinking about that, even inviting it as an option, we become susceptible to that being like ruling over us. So in that narrative, it was also explained how you basically, how you operate and you work with these energies is like when you focus on your own thing, greater karmic cycles and higher beings and higher operatives are taking care of that. There's higher karma. This law is for all life forms, not just for humans. We cannot forget that. And so today, instead of talking about the different schemes that might be behind this current virus mayhem and panic and control and people giving up their freedom in order to be, again, right, giving up their free will to choose whether they want to go out or not, right, being quarantined and being in a way suppressed again, right, told how to do, how to act, how to behave, and basically giving up their power and saying, okay, we're just gonna give up and be controlled in this way. And recently I've seen a video which was an interesting perspective about these agendas, and it's from a beautiful being I know for several years, because it started my awakening reading her books on Syrian High Council and their messages, and her name is Patricia Corey, and I've mentioned her many times before, and you can see her latest video when she discussed this global mayhem and the agenda behind it, and how it's all connected with the shutting down and resetting the global economic system and what they're trying to reinforce, and several of these things that I personally, as you know through my videos, don't go into. I don't even go into it anymore. It's because of what I explained in the beginning. Like, I don't even try to confront this energy. I know it has its own trajectory of spirit. I know it's doing the best that it can in order to survive. It's like staying alive. And the problem is that when we get too much into what they're doing, we forget why we are here. That's why I no longer focus on that. I focus on what we can do as a collective of individuals who are here as not just light workers, but beings who embody the light of Christ. And the Christ, the light, is the most powerful and potent force in the universe. And, you know, when we focus on that, we're birthing with this new evolving and unfolding cycle that Earth herself is trying to birth. And when we go into behind, it's like, what is behind this whole current unfolding of events? And we might say, well, this agenda, right? There's bioweaponing. We've been experiencing that since the last few, that's like more than a decade, right? There's different virus epidemics that have been enforced, and spraying of these viruses, and, you know, it's all been covered up. There's just one thing. The other thing is what's even behind this, right? It's not just forced vaccination and the patented vaccines that they're like giving humans and selling at a large price. We all know these corporations that are doing that intentionally and making huge profit, but I don't really feel that the essence of this is just profit. It's bigger than that when it comes to the dark operatives. But if we dig too deep, you know, what happens if we dig too deep? We become a part of that mess. That's a basic rule, because we forget about a higher law that's always there. It's guiding all of life forms constantly, but we forget about it most of the times, which is that even the dark serves the light. And when you stay focused on that, you don't go too much exploring like, what is this, what is that, whether it is a fake virus, whether it is all an orchestration, a game, right, a charade, whether it is true epidemics, but they're presenting it as on a larger scale than it truly is, and it's not that deadly or lethal. There are several of these options, and they, for me, when I view creation, they all coexist. It's all simultaneous realities, and that's what we often forget as humans, that it's not just one thing. Duality is it's either this, and if it's not this, then it's that. And I've been talking about this for years. When multidimensional consciousness is those beings who've been training for this, like we were trained on star systems beyond what we know here as our solar system, and we've brought, those of you especially who are of starseed descent and origin, you've brought tremendous powers, but a lot of these powers, they still lie dormant and asleep in our human consciousness. So when these things happen, and when the darkness is pushing with their agendas, it's actually waking up the dormant DNA, and it's concurrently operating with what the sun is beaming through and the cosmic rays are doing, and it's all for one major accomplishment, that we remember our magic and the abilities with which we came here to do. So if you want to go exploring the dark path, of course, go ahead, get informed. It's important to know what's going on. But what I'm saying is, don't become obsessed over it, because this obsession will make you lose a grasp on a higher essence that's behind this, because it truly is. And then you start lacking this trust that there is a bigger unfolding that's behind all these agendas. There's always an agenda behind an agenda, as you well know. Like first there's us as individuals, then there's us as a collective, then it's what we are being told as a collective through our governments, and then there's the governments behind the governments, and there's the elite behind those governments, and then there's the shadow puppet, and it's like so much, right? We as humans, each and every one of us is here to do our part. And when I was walking, that was just a few days ago, when I asked and I tuned into again this whole thing, because for me it didn't really feel real. It didn't have a substance, right? This virus thing. And I started hearing a voice of my guidance system and my guides. They were saying, it's a scam, it's a scam, it's a scam, right? They were like repeating it over and over. I'm like, I know, I get it. And when they say it's a scam, it doesn't mean none of it is even real. But what we're being shown is not real. But at the same time, there is a reason for what is happening. You see, this multidimensional reality is like a fractal reality. Is knowing one aspect, you can know the whole. But you really have to go deep into the rabbit hole, like in the totality of the micro sphere, in order to expand into a greater unfolding. And how you do that is you are a part of that fractal. You are a piece of the puzzle that hasn't perhaps been fully solved, but it's in the making of becoming something great. And that's the potential we should all be tapping into. Instead of fearing so much, what will be the next step? Martial law, reset of our economics, systems going down. What will be life beyond this current pause? What will happen after, when the rebooting happens one day? What's going to be behind that? How will life look like? With our brains, it's like we're constantly trying to find new configurations of a flight, like fight or flight survival mode. That's all connected. And I told you before that my own light family team has told me that we've been working with this fight or flight mode, and how they work is they work through my body. I'm the vessel, and it's like trying to find in the body the systems that are still resisting, right? And aspects of the body that are still resisting this direct infusion and informational awareness that comes directly from life force, that is constantly divinely intelligent, so it knows what to do and following its highest potential. But the moment when we go, a part of us goes like error, right? It gets blocked. It starts preventing this natural flow. We contract, and in that contraction, we can only find partial solutions and like current possibilities that we can just see with our narrow focus. With multidimensional awareness, it's like we're able to scan through reality that's just beyond just the physical brain. We have an etheric brain, right? And we have a heart brain that's majorly exploding into our new creation at this time. And a lot of us have been having tremendous symptoms that are showing us that this is real. So no matter what the scale of this charade is, and of course there's people who are still asleep that are acting upon it, right? And they're sort of showing obedience to what they're being told and what needs to be done. There's certain aspects that we just don't have control over. But at the same time, we're not to be obedient. We still need to follow our own rules. So it was interesting because Patricia talked about going to the pyramids in Bosnia with Samir Osmanagic, and he's the main guy there, and he's the one who discovered it. And I was there actually in 2011. Yeah, it was a really beautiful place. I mean, it is a beautiful place and highly energetic. And we've been there for several days, I remember. And the thing is, right, I saw his video right afterwards when he talked about how we're building our immune systems through negative ions and walking in the woods like full of pine trees. And he talked about how our bodies react. Like if you just walk for 2 hours in the woods, you're like good for a month or so, right? It's like you internally build immunology and you increase it. And a part of what I want to talk about today is what Gaia wants to, like, for the humans to feel into at this time. And how we are so deeply embedded in nature. And that's not just, you were saying, I have a walk every day and I have my nature routine, so I'm good. No, Gaia, what she wants from her awakened and self-realized humans is a total connection. It's like feeling her and her birth, that you're always first aligned with that. And then all the rest can come, right? That's why we've started these videos from the highest perspective of evolutionary creation, moving through planetary influence and what she's birthing, and then seeing how we are a part of this. Because we're key. We're the highest existing consciousness, like most evolved. We're not, like all aspects of humanity are most evolved. But those of us who are illumined humans, right? We're Christed beings. We demonstrate the highest possible state of evolution and using our higher brain capacity and higher heart capacity and merging them into becoming something new and giving life to higher aspects of life itself, right? So when we're causing this trinity of source infusion through life force infusion, us, and then the earth and earth's core, we are always conscious conduits and life force can flow through us. And in that state, although you trust it or not, and we are not yet at the specific level of evolution where we trust it like 100%. We each have our moments, right? We have our moments when we're at a peak of this experience and life is just effortless and it's all in the go. And then there's more challenging aspects of life when duality is still pushing us. And that's when we're expanding into higher gifts and capacities that we can hold at this time. And those are the times we usually don't trust at our maximum capacity. And this is what we're still working on. So this is a planet of duality still. This framework is still playing out. However, our mission here as light bringers and whatever kind of group of stellar origin or wherever you're coming from, we're all here basically for the same fundamental principles of life-giving, Christed union, and brotherhood, like collective fellowship of brotherhood and sisterhood, which is also, as you know, if you follow Theosophy, right, in these societies, that's also the main leading or guiding principle of life, is brotherhood, sacred brotherhood. So the issue is that even those of us who are, we consider ourselves the most awakened beings, we weren't always the most awake in the way we act, in the way we connect to Earth, the planetary consciousness, seeing and feeling her as a living, breathing being. So we were getting too involved, even if it's our spirituality, right? Or is it our work? We became so involved with what we're doing that we build kind of like a very strong fundamental practice or an attachment to it, like almost like it's our fundamental principle, it's our work. And personally, what I've been feeling for years now, but it's been especially strong and strengthened since this winter time, is like this can't go on. This isn't this living, sustaining principle of why we're truly here. Our work is not truly our mission. There are steps that we haven't even like walked into yet as concerning our planetary embodiment and what we can do and achieve here. Because as people, as humans, we're still living so separately from one another. I live in a tiny village, and I can't find one good person I can call a friend here or a good neighbor. Or if you really need help and assistance, someone coming in and saying, look, I can offer you this. When people go into panic, they separate, right? Still, sometimes. Not all of them, because there's people now showing their hearts and like developing this community. But there's certain people who are very still contracted. They're still in that tightened grip. They're still rather obedient instead of developing this communal sense of living. What Earth wants to give birth to at this time is a new level of union, of her union, of our union, because we're one with Earth. And although we've been saying that, right, from lip to, like vocalizing it out, it wasn't always true in the way we live. It's easy to speak that and say, oh, Gaia, I love Gaia. It's like Earth doesn't want to be praised and seen as a deity. She wants us to truly create a kind of life based on the principles of life-giving through the cosmic and planetary consciousness as one. And we haven't always been like that. But I gave you just my own example, which is just one humble example of a human trying to live their best possible life in each moment through the highest principles of Christ in loving union. So for me, I've told you, I was in this hermitage for so long that for me, being like in your own space is not something new. And for the last year or so, I told you I didn't even have a car or a vehicle that I could just go anywhere. And I was almost like forced by my guides or guidance system to be that way, so I can tap into the way in which you can be resourceful in a different way. I was being trained literally, and now it makes more sense to me why this is so. But in this past week or so, right, because we didn't have a car, so we were dependent on online stores. These stores have collapsed. People have been overly buying out of panic, right? It's what panic does to people. And it's no longer available, these services. So again, you're like, what am I supposed to do? And when we as humans, right, are facing these things, like when we again are in this fight or flight survival mode, we stop kind of feeling the bigger picture. Most people, I'm not like that. For me, that's actually always a trigger to tune into the bigger picture. But most people are not wired this yet, because once you are joined in your own illumined union, the tiniest aspect, the most contracted aspect, can become also your greatest resource, truly, in order to expand it into this greater whole. And that's what we've been doing, those of us who've been doing and pursuing this internal work for so long. It's like we already exist at these levels, and yet there's more. Because what I was tuning into this entire winter was this huge level of stagnation and like a lack of new possibility, like something just ended. And I was always, since my coming here and since I've activated my multidimensional consciousness and earth templating, which was specifically when they told me, right, last year I informed you that my team told me that the seed of Illumined Union was planted. So that meant it reached the core of the earth, and we've done this work, and we were so happy about it. I remember being so happy last year when they told me we've done this. This is the first step. Now watch it unfold. And it was like, okay, as a human, I'm still scared. I don't know what this means for the human. But they told me the first step was done. We were successful in that. And many times when it was very difficult, when I felt into these stagnant waves, I felt like giving up and quitting. And I've shared this very openly, authentically in my videos. I don't hide any aspect of this path because it is all a part of it. The frustration is just as well as the joy for the new, right? And the problem, well, the issue is when you get too identified with the harder aspects of this new birthing process, with these contractions that are leading to new openings and extensions of life, wanting to reach further beyond the known. So this entire winter I was so frustrated because I even kept saying it physically, like I can't see beyond this point. And I was saying, if life continues this way, I can see my future. I was no longer able to see the future. Like before, I always had this gift. I could see a few steps ahead, and then this ended. And it totally freaked me out because I kept saying, what good am I as a guide if I can tune into what's happening, what's the matter? And first, you know, is this fight or flight mode going off within you as a living human. You know you're multidimensional in your consciousness, and yet at that particular point you can access it, so it feels. And you're trying to reach for possibilities and zoom in and zoom out, and it just doesn't work. Like I felt like every time like I hit a wall. And this wall meant that we've already extended what we've done, this work we've extended like towards the last borders of this current reality, like our consciousness, the multidimensional seeding consciousness that we were to bring here. And that specifically goes not just for my light mission team, but for several of teams that came in the same timelines during this time that are present here. I'm not talking about the age of different bodies, right? It's about levels of consciousness that are carrying this mission forward in each of our vehicles, right? But I've literally felt into that the highest potential was exhausted. Like I can't move forward. Like my consciousness can't, like, you know, even I gave you this example with this place. When I first came here, it was all new and I could just fuse with every aspect of it. And then I asked, well, what will be the next merging aspect? Because I merged with all these aspects. And you know what's the funny thing? I have to share this with you. I said, I've merged with these aspects, and what's next? And the instant download answer that came was dolphin. It was like dolphin consciousness. I'm like, wow. you know, we all see dolphins, people swim with the dolphins, but it was not about that. This was about the next level of merging, like the next level of alignment for Earth and those of us who are pushing this ascension of Earth forward. You know, there's a lot of people, even in the New Age, who talk about this transition of Earth from third dimension to the fifth dimension, but this is not just that. It's not just so simple. You know, anyone can be a spokesperson for the fifth dimension and saying, we're moving in the fifth dimension. You know, the way we work, I literally receive direct guidance. Like each step, I'm going to be shown a very specific thing. And the deeper aspects of this, I always share with my group on Patreon called the Ascension. These are general videos I go out and do for the collective, for all of you who are interested enough to watch. But it's also about something specific. However, this part of the journey felt like very unknown, like I can't tap into it yet. And it's funny, right? Because I was experiencing this the entire winter, and just today, just before I head out and record this for you, I saw another video of a tarot reader who started doing these collective readings, right? And she was saying, it's almost like something we can tap into yet, and that's why it's scary. We have questions like, what will this mean for our work? Will my work be able to continue this way? Will I still be supported? Well, you know, all these questions and panic, and all of us, not just people who are asleep. Sometimes people who are the most awake can also experience the biggest panic. It's just a more of an introverted sense of a panic. Because people who are asleep, they will always externalize their feelings, because that's how they're used to doing things. They externalize every emotion because they can't integrate it yet. But what this means for us is we're going to feel an immense portion of these aspects that are kind of a part of this experiencing of the new birth, all these questioning, and people are just now starting to feel it. All these light communities, I've been feeling it for half of the year now. Yes, literally it's 6 months or so. And it's been progressing, and it's been progressing, and at times it was so intense that I had literally panic attacks, and I thought it was just connected with my life. And now this bigger picture is starting to make more sense. I'm seeing it's a part of the connection with Earth and this process, which no one ever said it was easy, but we never know how it will feel until the next portion is served, right? When something is served, you're like, okay, there it is, black and white, it is what it is, right? I can't like wishful think, write that into something else. It doesn't work this way. And then we have that portion, and we need to move through it, and then we integrate it. That's why, because this is so big, and it's like the essence behind what we already, all of the integrated aspects, all of our gifts, this is new. And because it's so new, it sometimes freaks out even people who are calling themselves psychics and doing any type of intuitive work. Because these people are most prone to being like open and susceptible to these changes. But those of us who are even steps further than that, we first digest these energies already. We're the first ones. That's what we're called, Ascension Pioneers. That's what my work is called, Ascension Pioneers. And the deeper work I do is called the Ascension. But it's really something that, like hitting a wall and not yet being able to see, like the light not penetrating through because we haven't made the first steps into it. But as an essence, we were already feeling it. And because I do all my work based on the essence level, and I receive all my guidance based on the essence level first, the essence is that which precedes any other level. So it's always first. And then it starts to densify, and then eventually it hits the collective when the time is right. And the timelines interject, and everything simply aligns. So as much as this what's happening now sometimes still causes this fight or flight mode and questioning the operatives behind it and the dark agendas and this and that, we have to be strong in a way that we know that we are also a step ahead of them, because we see these changes as a part of a bigger process, and they cannot, because they've separated themselves from that. And the most important message Spirit gave me is, even with their agendas and pushing their, it's almost like seeing them as spoiled children who always need to get their way and being on top of the game. And this is how humanity will look like. This is how we want the world to function, and this is how we want control to be, and this is the systems, and this is how we want people to work for us in the system and the matrix and all of that. And if we even partially believe that, we're already starting to feed that, because our belief, right, will send impulses of life force there directly. That's why every single aspect of that darkness that we see, we have to bring back within and see how that triggers us to keep on expanding our superpowers. And our superpowers are not always like so grandiose, right? We're flying and we're levitating. These superpowers are the way we can handle change at any cause, showing up like drastically, unconditionally serving this process along the way just by going through it. That's such devotion through unconditional love and acceptance. And they showed me all these messages of complete surrender, acceptance. And at these times, sometimes non-action is the best kind of action you can take, because you're helping the flow of the higher penetrating aspects of life move much farther than when you're saying, no, I want it to be this way, because you're contracting and you're kind of building the oppression, and you continuously pour your liquid light to the further contraction and control. But what they also show me is that in their very much high pursuits, and as most advanced technology, they have not just bioweaponry and chemical and all these things, right, they can do, and mimicking the space travel from the ET technologies, they've kind of, intercepted and worked with for years and years, truly, behind the scenes. And with all of that, right, they still don't have the heart. They have their consciousness. It's a different way of seeing life that humanity does. Humanity has the heart. Humanity was birthed through this cosmic Christ essence. And as much as, of course, the potentials for higher exploration of human consciousness potential were so dormant for so long because they were so manipulated, it's because simply they allowed themselves to be, because they forgot their true ancestry. That's why I'm talking so much about the importance of the Christ and the Christed mission, because the Christ makes you the most powerful being. Even if you're just a human, you're still able to be so powerful. It's light being contracted in this human form, and yet it's not. You know what I mean? So they were showing me how in all of their pursuits and all of their knowledge and all of their resources and all that they're piled up, they don't know how to work with light quotient. And because of that, because they themselves don't see the bigger picture, that's where they're also so obsessed with astrology and picking specific dates, because they don't feel it naturally, right? So they need to use these means and magic and dark magic and all of that. Because they do always take into consideration these alignments. And on some level, they're just following a bigger wave, which is the Earth self-initiatory process, which is a part of the greater cosmic process, right? And ascension in our solar system. It was a collective decree and decision of souls who wanted to birth life into this form, in this creation, a next step further in their evolution. And that's what it became. And all operatives and all councils of light work in co-creation to pursue that path, to help humanity fulfill that desire as a collective soul group. So because anyone who goes against that, sometimes they become blind to even their own doings. It's like they're not free of blind spots. We all have them, the light ones, the dark ones. This is truly not about who wins, right? This is about the path of merging. And the path of merging can only happen naturally when we focus on our pursuits and they focus on their pursuits, and eventually life force is going to bring that together. We don't know how and when, because we don't see as life force does. We're fractals, right? We're aspects of source. But we are all these beautiful divine children, and yet we're not just children. We're co-creators with the divine, and we need to remember the focus should always be on what I can do and what I am doing, because our legacy in the world is not just you living your personal life in seclusion and only caring about you and your loved ones, and that's it. Everyone who's on this planet, that ever was on this planet and ever shall be, and anywhere, we have things that we ourselves need to learn, things we need to master and expand into ourselves, and then things we need to pass on to others. There's this, everything is a divine trinity of light. And you all came to pass on something else, not just like wisdom and, because what I do is I live my life, and whatever I experience, I then pass on to others, which was already a cultivation and a culmination of my own learning, my own integration and higher wisdom that I came into with this mastery, and then sharing it, passing it on to others. That's my legacy. And it's the legacy of my entire soul group working through me. And we all have that connection. No one is devoid of that. It's just that we forget about that, and we focus too much on this material aspect, and we get so focused on what's happening instead of always feeling into it is what it is, and whatever it is, it's for a reason. But getting passive, we're already like stopping the flow. We need to be proactive, but sometimes being proactive is not just based around doing, pursuing. It's being proactive in the way that the higher spirituality within you will show you. And you can have that without having moments, not just moments, but a high portion of your life based on non-activity, which all masters teach as well. You have to be in that state of silence and silent mastery and hermitage, just as well as when you're pursuing the world and having your experiences and building your building blocks. But the problem with a lot of people is they focus too much of a portion of their lives around their work and what they do, and then the rest is almost like fading into background, right? And becomes just humming noise. So even the dark ones, they have their blind spots. And what Spirit showed me is that eventually a part of their growth and learning will not come from us saying, oh, look, you should do it this way, and, we're going to go against you. Their own doings will be their own demise. But they also have to live through their process just like we do. And for me, I always live through these higher principles. I wouldn't judge anyone for whatever they're doing, but simply when you surpass a certain level of getting involved with the world, it's not like you are above it and you're higher and better than anyone or anything that's happening. It's just you're so detached from it all, and you're just a neutral observer, but you're able to cultivate your own mission. So even in my life, years ago, my own soul family, my oversoul complex told me to just stop watching these things about ascension and what a lot of new age pursuits about that were. I just, they brought me here to this seclusion so that I could start channeling my own spirit guidance, the work that is so uniquely just for me and from me, because that's how we're actually fulfilling life force, spirit's potential and purpose. That's our purpose, is not getting too much lost in all the teachings, because there's such a wide framework of teaching and all. You can get lost in it for, as much as you want. There's a lot. But basically all teachings, like higher teachings, have a star origin. Life originated from the stars. And when you trace your own lineage, you're starting to be more susceptible to the knowledge, that which comes to you. And that always comes naturally. You don't have to work hard for it. It's like people tell you have to learn these skills to actually know that. We learn skills to expand ourselves, right? But there's something, a component in us that is already so natural, and it always flows. It's something you're just naturally good at. But the problem with the way our life is structured around our work so much is that most of the people can't even develop that because they never have time. And time is focus, right? They never give their attention to that. So in these times, it's almost like the dark serves the light in order to stop life for a while so that people can become more introverted in a way if they choose to be. It is always like this. Everything still has its own free will. And although the collective of souls at the soul level can ask for something, and then specifically the way that is demonstrated and given to them on the earth will not always be the way we envision it, right? But it will be what needs to be. Like, we don't get always what we ask for, but we get what we need. And that need always serves the highest good, but we don't as individuals see the highest good because we always say, well, how does that highest good serve me? Because right now I feel terrible. I don't like what's happening. That's the ego, because we're not based yet on this complete resilience and perseverance of learning to wait it out. Like, there's beings who function on the eon principle, and the eon principle is like these beings who they become so merged with the essence of a higher life force cycle that it's like they become it, and they no longer sense time. They're just merged with that eon, and they know how to wait it out. And it doesn't even feel like you're waiting it out. But at the human level, everything feels so dense, right? That's how we perceive things. So for us, it's so difficult to weigh things out. And just yesterday, I met someone because I wanted to power myself, like charge myself through the power of negative ions, which, as you know, here I'm recording next to a waterfall because I'm just really feeling called this week to merge with the higher life force of this already newness coming in. And I met someone who I met 4 years ago in almost the same place. And we recognized each other, you know, with this man. And we started talking. And we talked about these things as well, right? And it was so interesting because certain things we talked about were directly the things that were a part of my life in this moment. So it was like, wow, how did this happen? How does life force just make this happen so effortlessly? And it really is so important right now to know that we have to allow things to happen. This allowance is, I think, the least mastered quality of the human traits. But it can create miracles almost instantly. And we were talking with this man, and I explained my conditions and how they were for the past 2 years. And he said, wow, but you've at least mastered this art of waiting, like waiting it out. Because sometimes that's the best thing to do. And I said, exactly. And people just don't know how to wait. They can't even wait 1 week for a store to open. It's like, grabby, right? A lot is about the human choices at this time. And remember, humanity, as much as it's a one collective, it exists in layers of different levels of operational framework. Like, it goes from the most linear, densest being to the most expanded multidimensional being, and the way they perceive divine intelligence and the way they operate in this physical realm. And it's not about competition and who's higher. It's just natural. It comes with soul expansion, and it comes with your own personal soul evolution as a part of your oversoul. And those of us who are perhaps more advanced in these consciousness training, we can see things much forward and in advance and in a wider perspective. But that doesn't make us secluded also from this minute picture and agendas and dark pursuits. And of course, it also influences us. It has an effect on our physical day-to-day life. How to get money, right? How to get resources, how to get food. If everything closes down, we are all affected. But the difference is that once you have a multidimensional spectrum of awareness and you're susceptible to things being the way they are, it's almost like these Tao teachings, right? Yin and yang. Life needs to balance itself out. You don't get to make that happen. I don't get to make that happen. Life happens itself through us. But we as humans, as conscious conduits, we need to practice this art of allowance. And this is, like I said, the most underdeveloped trait in our human psyche. Because it's almost like we were pushed and pushed in a certain direction for so long that we lost a sense of how it is to just be in this mode of non-action and things just happening and coming and receiving all the nourishment and support we need in this moment. And there are times when we think, what the heck, I don't have any support. I don't have even one human being who would care about me and my life. And when you start thinking like that, if you ever do come to such a contracted expression of your life, you always have you and your soul over soul. So it does take a lot of training for us to develop this, and I've been doing it for 7 years now here in this place, in this space, and I'm in it just as everyone else is in it, just in my own way, right? We each have our individual experience with this. But again, the message of Spirit is that we need to focus on what, not just what can we do better, but what life, kind of seeing, feeling, tuning into what life, interplanetary consciousness merge, what kind of direction life naturally wants to move us for without us thinking it through. Because thinking, right, is, you know, the Einstein's quote, the consciousness that created the problem cannot fix it, cannot solve it. Exactly. That's why there's this total reset, so something new can be birthed. And first it will happen within the most expanded individuals who are most susceptible to this. And then we're going to start passing it on to others. It's always been like this. There's a hierarchy of light. The hierarchy doesn't mean better, lesser, higher, lower. It simply means the way light demonstrates itself and merges, like this essence of spirit is merging with aspects of life that are denser and more physical, from higher to lesser to lower. That's how light travels. So find your space at this time and focus on cultivating your gifts and feel into this effortless nature of life. That's why I'm recording next to our waterfall here. Because I always feel the best next to a waterfall. And it's this body of water that's just naturally flowing and it never runs out. If you want to be in the presence of abundance, go next to a waterfall. It never runs out. You might ask yourself, but where is this all water coming from? It's not raining. The mountain can have all this water. It's not all from snow. Where is it coming from? There's these aspects of life, right? That when we as humans are looking into, we can do like in awe. And that's how we're supposed to feel, in awe, in this newly coming into life change. Instead of holding our hands like this, squeezing our heads tight and trying to think our way through it. It won't go, I'm telling you. I've been through it the entire winter, trying to think my way through this process, and it didn't work. And eventually I simply said, I surrender. I don't know the way forward. And that's what the beauty of life will naturally bring the things into this alignment. But the problem is we don't trust. We don't see life as a being. We don't see that life on earth also has a personality in a way. It's difficult to call it like that, but it has an expression that if you're not ever in tune with that, and people, like I'm seeing it in the psychic communities now, they're the first one who are trying to feel this energy behind the scenes that is like just starting to come to the forefront. It's new. It's really new. And today I took again these oracle cards and I asked, what's behind this process? Is it really that dark? And no, the card I got was actually feminine and masculine looking at each other, and between them there was a baby, a new birth. This union, that's what Earth is birthing. And I'm going to be talking about this. I'm going to be taking these messages deeper. I'm going to be doing a channeled session on Patreon. I do these transmissions. It's called the Ascension. For those of you who ever want to join, that's where I do my work. I know times are tough now. A lot of people are fearing for their work and jobs, and really, really find a practice that gets you into the moment, whether it is yoga, karate, any other things like Tai Chi, Qigong. I'm going to do some life force exercise on the beach, dance. Just bring your body to this now moment, do something really elevating for the movement of life force to your body. And that's always my main teaching. It's all about life force. Beyond anything that we call a certain type of consciousness, it's first infused through life force. And when we can connect to that, I've been talking about this for years, and I don't know how many people actually paid attention, but this is it. This is like where the classroom goes out on the field and does the field work. This is the time. It's like the end of the classrooms. That's why a lot of people are feeling, my work is changing. Maybe we don't need as many messages that just kept repeating themselves, like there's like 1,000 YouTube channels now focused around tarot readings and pick a card readings. And as beautiful as it is, people, fine-tuning their gifts, it's a process. But like I'm saying, there will come a time when we're going to need to take these gifts into a more communal sense of living and expanding our lifestyles on earth. And I've been doing this internally, tuning into that essence for quite a few years now, like trying to envision how would life look like after this, when we break through this threshold of light quotient that's necessary to make this change. And as one human, I can't envision the totality. But it's just like I was getting myself as a part of the bigger merge, the bigger dreamscape aspect of life that's dreaming a new creation cycle into being. And you can do that as well yourself. Just take any practice that sustains you in this moment. And when people talk about life force, if you're just a beginning and you don't even know what that means, a lot of people think, oh, that's just the vital chi energy. When I talk about life force, is spiritual life force behind what we call the living prana chi energy. It's even behind that. It has a primary origin within the central sun of all suns, and the way it's fed through different systems and nourishes them, and then becomes different aspects depending on that system. On Earth, we know that physically as a vital life force energy, as chi energy, but that's a more physical aspect of what I call life force. So when we say, well, I'm raising my life force, it doesn't mean you go up for a run or you do yoga and, okay, I've raised my life force. These are practices that help you to be a more susceptible vessel, pure, transparent vessel for channeling higher aspects of life force. That's for me life force mastery work. And if you don't know what that is, I have a course called Life Force Mastery, and it's under my courses on my webpage. And there's other things available as well. So those of you that I will see as always on Patreon, I will see you there. So this concludes our third aspect of tuning into this content, this subject that's very important, very dear to a lot of us who've been birthing this for a longer time with Gaia. And it's not just time on Earth. This is ancient, This has been in the making for, and it's not just earthly, it's stellar based, because it's all connected. Because the way things are in the cosmos, like every aspect of life simply just locks in. And so this is kind of like a love project in the making for so many beings of the Christ origin in the sense. So it is what it is. So if you want to know more, if you're having difficulties at this time to move through this, I also, do sessions. And that's it. I hope to see you again soon when time makes that so and makes it possible. And until then, have so much joy in your life, no matter what. And as always, so much love, beauty, and power. Love, wisdom, and power. That beauty wanted to come through today. I'll see you guys. Bye.